I never thought my life would take such a devastating turn. For as long as I could remember, I believed in the simplicity of things. Work hard, love your family, and life would reward you. That was my philosophy, and for the longest time, it seemed to hold true. But all of that shattered the day I realized even my own name felt foreign to me. It started as an ordinary moment. I was in the kitchen, rinsing out a coffee mug, when my wife, Amanda, called from the living room. She was laughing, gently rocking our newborn son in her arms. "You know, he really does look like him," she said casually. I froze. Him. I turned off the faucet, though the water still swirled down the drain, my heart thudding in my chest. "Who's him?" I asked, forcing out a chuckle, trying to keep my voice light. For a second, just a split second, Amanda hesitated. Something flashed across her face, but it disappeared too quickly for me to catch. Then she smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, no one," she said, waving a hand dismissively. "Just a silly thought." But it wasn't just a silly thought. I knew my wife. I knew when something was off. That night, as she lay beside me, fast asleep, I stared up at the ceiling, my mind racing. What had she meant? Who did our son remind her of? By morning, the doubt had eaten away at me so much that I did something I never imagined I'd have to do. I ordered a DNA test. It felt absurd, like I was being paranoid, but I couldn't shake the weight pressing down on my chest. I swabbed my cheek, then my son's, and sent the samples off. I told myself I was just being irrational, that Amanda would laugh when I told her about it later. I even imagined myself laughing too. 2 weeks later, the results arrived. The envelope with the DNA results sat on my desk for hours before I could bring myself to open it. My fingers hovered over the seal, my chest tightening with each passing second. A part of me wanted to tear it up, toss it in the trash, and pretend I had never gone down this road. But another part, the part that already knew the truth deep in my gut, needed to see it, needed to read those words with my own eyes. When I finally unfolded the paper, the world around me blurred. The document was cold, clinical, emotionless. Probability of paternity, 0%. A simple line. Just a handful of numbers and letters. Yet it was the most devastating thing I had ever read. I gripped the edge of the desk to steady myself. My breath came in shallow gasps, my vision darkening at the edges. For a moment, I thought I might pass out. I forced myself to sit down, but even the chair beneath me felt foreign, like I was floating above my own body, watching some poor fool realize his entire life had been a lie. Because that's what it was now, a lie. Every "I love you," every shared moment, every late-night whisper in the dark, tainted. Amanda had let me believe this child was mine. She had looked me in the eyes, held my hand as I cried tears of joy at his birth, all while knowing the truth. She had stolen something from me, something I could never get back. My stomach twisted violently. I had to brace myself against the desk to keep from doubling over. I needed answers. I needed to hear her say it. To look me in the eye and explain how she had let me build a life around a child that wasn't mine. But at the same time, I wasn't sure if I could handle hearing the words come from her lips. I waited until she came home that evening, carrying a grocery bag in one hand and her phone in the other. She glanced up, smiling at me the way she always did, so effortlessly, like nothing was wrong, like we were just another happy couple at the end of a long day. I held up the DNA results. "We need to talk." Her smile faltered just slightly. "About what?" "You already know," I said, my own voice sounding foreign and strained. "Don't pretend you don't." She set the groceries down, straightening her shoulders. "Ethan, I have no idea what you're talking about." Something inside me snapped. Not anger, not yet. Something colder. Deeper. "You're really going to do this?" I whispered. "You're really going to lie to my face right now?" Her eyes darted toward the door, like she was already planning her escape. That told me everything. "Who is he?" I asked. The words felt thick on my tongue, like they didn't belong in my mouth. Amanda's lips parted slightly, but no sound came out. She blinked once. Twice. Then, finally, she exhaled and looked away. "I don't know what you want me to say." "I want you to say his name." She bit her lip. Something flickered behind her eyes. Guilt, fear. Maybe both. Finally, she whispered it. And the moment she did, my world tilted on its axis. Because I knew him. I knew him very well. It wasn't some stranger, some faceless nobody I could direct my rage at. No, that would have been too easy. The name that left Amanda's lips hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. Ryan. My best friend. The room suddenly felt suffocating, the walls pressing in around me. I tried to speak, but my throat locked up. Amanda didn't move. Didn't even try to reach for me. She just stood there, waiting. Watching. Like she had already accepted what was coming. Maybe she had known all along that the truth would come out one day. Maybe she had prepared for this moment. But I hadn't. I had never imagined this level of betrayal. Not from her. Not from him. When my voice finally came out, it was hoarse, barely above a whisper. "Does it matter?" she asked, her voice fragile. I slammed my fist down on the counter, the sound echoing through the kitchen. "Of course it matters." My whole body was trembling, though I wasn't sure if it was from rage, grief, or something in between. Amanda swallowed hard, her hands gripping the fabric of her sweater, twisting it as she struggled to find the right words. "It was a mistake." I let out a bitter laugh, running a hand through my hair. "A mistake?" "A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk at the store. A mistake is missing a turn on the highway. You don't accidentally sleep with my best friend and lie about it for over a year, Amanda." She flinched, but I wasn't done. "Did he know?" I demanded. She hesitated. That hesitation was all the answer I needed. My stomach twisted violently. Ryan had known. He had known this whole time. And he had said nothing. He had smiled in my face, shaken my hand, watched me raise his child, and never once had the decency to tell me the truth. I had bought him gifts when his own child was born. I had toasted drinks with him at my wedding. I had stood by his side through some of the hardest moments of his life. And all the while, he had been stabbing me in the back. I took a step away from Amanda, needing air. But no matter how far I moved, the weight on my chest only grew heavier. "You have every right to hate me," she murmured, her voice barely audible. I laughed, but it was hollow. Empty. "Hate you? I don't even know who you are anymore." Silence stretched between us. Thick. Unbearable. The hum of the refrigerator, the distant ticking of the clock, every sound in the house was too loud, pressing against my ears like static. "I never wanted to hurt you," she whispered. I turned to face her, my hands clenched into fists at my sides. "But you did," I said, my voice steady. "You chose to. Over and over again." She didn't argue. Didn't try to deny it. Maybe, in her own way, she thought her silence was mercy. But there was no mercy in betrayal. I couldn't stay in that house any longer. My skin itched. My head pounded. I needed out. Without another word, I grabbed my keys and walked out the door. I felt her eyes on me as I left, burning into my back. But I didn't look back. I drove without a destination, the city lights fading behind me, swallowed by the empty stretch of highway. My hands gripped the steering wheel like it was the only thing tethering me to reality. I kept the windows rolled down, letting the cold night air sting my skin, hoping it would keep me grounded, keep me from drowning in the storm of thoughts circling my mind like vultures. Ryan. Amanda. My son. No, not my son. That truth sat in my chest like a stone too heavy to move. I kept expecting to wake up, for this to be some kind of sick, twisted dream. But the pain was real. The betrayal was real. And no matter how far I drove, I couldn't outrun it. My phone vibrated in the passenger seat. I glanced at it. I already knew who it was before even looking at the screen. Amanda. I ignored it. A minute later, another call. Then another. Each time, I let it ring until it stopped. What could she possibly say to me now? What words could fix what had been broken? Eventually, I pulled into an empty gas station off the highway, parking beside a lone pump. The fluorescent lights overhead flickered, buzzing faintly, casting an eerie glow over the cracked pavement. I stepped out of the car, stretching my stiff legs, trying to shake the tension gripping my body like a vice. Inside, The place was empty except for a bored-looking cashier slumped against the counter, scrolling through his phone. I grabbed a bottle of water from the fridge. As I reached for my wallet, my fingers brushed against something in my pocket, the envelope. The DNA results. I pulled it out, staring at it like it was some foreign object. Like it wasn't the reason my entire world had just been turned inside out. The cashier glanced up. Rough night. I let out a breath, shaking my head. Something like that. He chuckled dryly. Yeah, been there. I almost laughed. No, you haven't. Not like this. But I didn't say anything. I just paid for my water and walked back to my car, sliding into the driver's seat with a heavy sigh. My phone buzzed again. But this time, it wasn't Amanda. Ryan. My fingers clenched around the device, my nails digging into my palm. I stared at his name on the screen, rage bubbling beneath my skin. Of all the people in the world, he had been the one I trusted most. He had been there through everything: college, my wedding, the birth of my son. And the entire time, he had been lying to my face. The call ended. A message popped up immediately after. Ryan, we need to talk. Please. Just let me explain. Explain? Explain what? He had slept with my wife. He had fathered a child with her. He had watched me raise that child, knowing the truth, and said nothing. Another message. Ryan, I never wanted it to happen this way. It's not what you think. I gritted my teeth. Not what I think. How else was I supposed to take this? Was I supposed to believe it was all just a mistake? A moment of weakness? That it just happened, like Amanda had said? No. That wasn't good enough. Before I could stop myself, I hit the call button. Ryan picked up on the first ring. Ethan. Talk, I said, my voice void of emotion. Silence. Then a deep sigh. I never meant to hurt you, he started. I laughed bitterly. You didn't mean to hurt me? Then what was your plan, Ryan? To keep lying until the day I died? To let me raise your kid and never know the difference? It wasn't like that, he said quickly. I didn't know at first. I swear, I didn't. Amanda never told me. I only found out recently. My grip on the phone tightened. How recently? He hesitated. How recently, Ryan? A beat of silence. Then, quietly, 3 months ago. I closed my eyes, exhaling slowly through my nose. 3 months. For 3 months, he had walked around with this secret. For 3 months, he had looked me in the eye, knowing the truth. You should have told me, I said, my voice dangerously low. I wanted to, but Amanda. Don't. I cut him off before he could finish. Don't you dare blame this on her. You made your own choices. More silence. Then, are you still at home? I frowned. Why does it matter? Another pause. Then, quieter, almost guilty. She's looking for you, Ethan. She's scared. I nearly laughed. Scared? She had no right to be scared. I don't care, I snapped. She lost the right to be scared when she decided to build a life on a lie. I get it, Ryan said. I do. But just, don't do anything stupid, okay? I clenched my jaw, the audacity of this man making my blood boil. He had the nerve to act concerned for me? After everything he had done. I'm done talking, I said flatly, and before he could say another word, I hung up. I sat there in the quiet, gripping the steering wheel, staring out into the empty parking lot. My whole life had imploded in a single day. My marriage. My friendship. My identity as a father. All of it, ripped away. And the worst part? I still had no idea what to do next. I didn't go back home that night. I couldn't. The house wasn't mine anymore. The memories inside those walls had rotted from the inside out, hollowed by lies, deception, and a betrayal so deep it made my skin crawl. So, I did the only thing I could. I drove. I let the road stretch endlessly ahead of me, my hands gripping the wheel, my knuckles white. My mind refused to settle. It kept replaying the past like an old glitching film reel, every moment with Amanda, every late-night conversation with Ryan, Every second I had spent believing I was someone I wasn't. Somewhere along the highway, I pulled into a deserted rest stop. The parking lot was empty except for a single 18-wheeler idling near the edge of the lot. The air was thick with the smell of diesel and damp asphalt. I turned off the engine and let my head fall against the steering wheel, exhaustion settling deep into my bones. For the first time since reading those DNA results, I let myself feel it. All of it. The betrayal. The anger. The grief. The overwhelming sense of, who the hell am I now? My breath came in short, shaky bursts, and for a terrifying moment, I thought I might actually break. But I didn't. Instead, I forced myself to sit up, reaching for my phone. Before I could think better of it, I scrolled through my contacts. My thumb hovered over the one name that felt like a lifeline in the storm. My brother, Nate. We weren't close. Not like we used to be. Life had pulled us in different directions. He had his own family, his own responsibilities. We hadn't spoken in months. But if there was anyone in the world who could anchor me right now, it was him. I hit the call button. It rang 3 times before a groggy voice answered. Ethan. What the hell, man? There was a pause. It's almost 3 in the morning. I know, I said, my voice rough. There was rustling, like he was sitting up. His tone shifted instantly. What's wrong? I opened my mouth. But for a moment, I couldn't speak. How the hell was I supposed to explain this? I took a shaky breath, gripping the phone tighter. I need to see you. Nate didn't ask why. He didn't hesitate. You still in town? I glanced at the dimly lit sign near the road. No. I don't even know where I am. Somewhere off Route 87. A rest stop about an hour out. Send me your location. Come here. I exhaled, nodding even though he couldn't see me. Thanks, man. Just drive safe, he said, his voice calm, steady. And Ethan, whatever it is, we'll figure it out. I hung up and stared at the address he had just sent. An hour. That was all that separated me from the one person in my life who might actually understand what I was going through. I put the car into gear and started driving. By the time I pulled into Nate's driveway, exhaustion pressed down on me like a physical weight. His house was modest, a single-story home with a porch light casting a dim glow over the front steps. The living room curtains were pulled back, and I could see him standing there, waiting. I barely had time to step out of the car before he opened the front door. He was barefoot, wearing an old t-shirt and sweatpants, his hair messy from sleep. But his eyes were sharp, scanning me like he was trying to assess just how bad things really were. Come inside, he said. I followed him in. The warmth of the house was a stark contrast to the cold that had settled in my chest. The smell of coffee filled the air, even though it was the middle of the night. Nate didn't ask any questions. Not yet. He just poured 2 cups, sliding one across the counter toward me. I took a sip, my hands still shaking slightly. We sat there in silence, the weight of everything pressing down between us. Finally, Nate spoke. Start from the beginning. Don't leave anything out. So I did. I told him everything. Amanda, Ryan, the DNA results, the way my entire identity had been ripped away in a single moment. How I had spent the last few hours driving aimlessly, trying to escape something that felt inescapable. Nate listened without interrupting, his jaw tightening with each passing moment. By the time I finished, he let out a slow breath, setting his coffee cup down with a quiet clink. Jesus, he muttered, rubbing a hand over his face. That's a hell of a thing. No kidding, I said bitterly. You got a plan? I let out a humorless laugh. If I did, I wouldn't be here. Nate nodded, leaning back in his chair. Okay. So what do you want to do? That question hit me harder than I expected. What did I want? Did I want revenge? Did I want answers? Did I want to disappear completely, erase every trace of the life I had built with Amanda and start over somewhere else? I don't know, I admitted. I don't even know who I am anymore. Nate studied me for a long moment before finally saying, then maybe it's time to figure that out. His words settled deep into my bones, anchoring me in a way nothing else had. Because for the first time since this nightmare started, I realized something. Amanda and Ryan had taken a lot from me. They had stolen years of my life, my trust, my sense of self. But they hadn't taken everything. I still had a choice. I woke up to the smell of coffee and the distant hum of the morning news playing on the TV. For a few seconds, I wasn't sure where I was. The unfamiliar ceiling above me. The worn-out couch beneath my back. Then it all rushed back. The DNA test. Amanda. Ryan. The drive. Nate. I groaned, running a hand over my face. I felt like I had been hit by a freight train. My muscles ached from tension I hadn't let go of, and my head throbbed from the lack of sleep. But for the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't drowning in the noise of my own mind. The pain was still there. But it wasn't all-consuming. I forced myself to sit up, blinking against the sunlight streaming through the window. Nate was in the kitchen, leaning against the counter with a steaming mug in his hands. He glanced up when he saw me. "Figured you'd sleep till noon," he said. "Didn't think you'd be up this early." I let out a dry laugh, rubbing my temples. "Didn't think I'd sleep at all." He nodded like he understood. "Coffee's fresh." I dragged myself to the kitchen, pouring a cup. The warmth seeped into my fingers, grounding me in a way I desperately needed. We stood in silence for a few moments, sipping our coffee. It was the kind of silence only brothers could share, the kind that didn't need to be filled. Finally, Nate spoke. "So, what's next?" I exhaled slowly, staring into my cup. That question had been haunting me since the moment I walked out of my house. What was next? "I don't know," I admitted. "I can't go back. Not yet." Nate nodded, like he had expected that. "You got a place to stay?" I shook my head. I hadn't even thought that far ahead. My entire focus had been on escaping, on putting as much distance between myself and the wreckage of my life as possible. "You can stay here," Nate said, "for as long as you need." I looked at him, searching his face for any hint of hesitation. But there was none. "You sure?" I asked. He shrugged. "You're my brother." That simple statement nearly undid me. After everything that had been taken from me, after feeling like I had lost my entire identity, here was someone reminding me that I wasn't completely alone. "Thanks," I said, my voice rough. Nate clapped a hand on my shoulder. "Don't mention it." And for the first time since everything fell apart, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I wasn't completely lost. The next few days passed in a blur. I stayed at Nate's, barely leaving the house, trying to process everything. He gave me space when I needed it, but he also kept me occupied, dragging me outside for runs, distracting me with mindless conversations about sports and TV shows, doing everything in his power to keep me from spiraling. It worked. Mostly. But the quiet moments were the hardest. The ones where I had nothing to focus on except my own thoughts. That's when the anger crept in. The grief. The overwhelming what now. And then there was Amanda. She had stopped calling after the first day. But she hadn't given up. She started texting instead. At first, I ignored them. I didn't want to see her words. Didn't want to let her back into my head. But on the third night, when the weight of everything became too much, I opened one. "Amanda, I know you hate me. But please, just talk to me." I scoffed, tossing my phone onto the bed. What was there to say? She had made her choices. She had built a life on deception. And yet, I wasn't sure I could move forward without answers. The next morning, I made a decision. I was going to see her. Not to fix things. Not to forgive. But to finally get the truth. Because if I was ever going to move forward, I needed to close the door on the life I had left behind. I never thought I'd be afraid to walk into my own home. The place where I had spent years building a life, where I had once felt the safest. But as I pulled into the driveway, I realized it didn't feel like home anymore. Everything about it was the same: the neatly trimmed lawn, the porch light that Amanda always forgot to turn off, the small crack in the pavement near the mailbox that I had always meant to fix but never did. And yet, it felt foreign, like I was stepping into someone else's life. I turned off the engine, but I didn't move. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. The weight of the last few days pressed down on me, the sleepless nights, the rage simmering beneath my skin, the questions I couldn't ignore any longer. Part of me wanted to turn around and drive away, to leave this place behind forever. But the other part, the part that needed closure, kept me rooted in place. I had come here for answers, and I was going to get them. Taking a deep breath, I stepped out of the car and walked to the front door. Before I could knock, it opened. Amanda stood there, eyes wide, as if she hadn't actually expected me to show up. She looked different. Not physically. She was still the same woman I had married, the same person I had once loved. But there was something in her expression that I couldn't place. Guilt. Fear. Maybe both. "Ethan," she breathed, gripping the edge of the door. I didn't respond. I just walked past her into the house. It smelled the same, faintly of coffee and the vanilla candles she always kept on the kitchen counter. But everything felt different. The air was too warm, suffocating. Like the house itself knew I didn't belong there anymore. She closed the door behind me. I didn't think you'd come," she said hesitantly. I turned to face her, my jaw clenched. "You wanted to talk. So talk." She swallowed, wringing her hands together. "I don't even know where to start." I let out a bitter laugh. "Try the beginning." She flinched but nodded. She led me into the living room. The couch where I had spent so many nights watching TV, where we had once sat together planning our future, suddenly felt like it belonged to a stranger. I didn't sit. Neither did she. "Why?" I asked, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. "Why him? Why Ryan?" She exhaled shakily, rubbing her temples. "I don't know." I scoffed. "You don't know?" "It wasn't planned," she said quickly. "It just happened." My fists clenched at my sides. "Things like this don't just happen, Amanda. You made a choice. Multiple choices." Her eyes filled with tears, but I refused to let myself feel anything for her. "Not anymore." "I was lonely," she whispered. "You were working so much. We barely saw each other. And Ryan, he was there." My stomach twisted. "So that's your excuse?" I asked. "I worked too much." "I'm not excusing it," she said, her voice trembling. "I know I messed up. I know I destroyed everything." I stared at her, searching for the person I had once trusted. But I couldn't find her. "Did you ever plan on telling me?" She was silent, and that was my answer. I let out a sharp breath, shaking my head. "So what? You were just going to let me raise another man's child without ever knowing?" Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I didn't know for sure at first. And when I found out," she trailed off, wiping her face, "I was scared. I didn't want to lose you." I let out a bitter laugh. "You lost me the moment you made the decision for me." She opened her mouth to say something, but I held up a hand. "I don't need more excuses," I said. "I just need the truth." She hesitated, then nodded. "I never stopped loving you, Ethan." I let her words hang in the air for a moment before I responded. "That doesn't mean anything anymore." Her face crumpled, but I didn't care. I turned toward the door, the weight of the conversation settling deep in my chest. "Where are you going?" she asked, her voice small. I didn't look back. "Somewhere that isn't here." And with that, I walked out of the house that wasn't mine anymore. I didn't hesitate. I didn't second-guess my decision. I had spent too much time clinging to something that no longer existed. My marriage, my home, my so-called family. It had all been built on a lie. And now, I was finally letting it go. As I got into my car, a strange sense of relief washed over me. The weight that had been crushing my chest since the moment I opened that DNA test, it was still there. But lighter now. Like I could finally breathe again. For the first time in days, I wasn't drowning. I drove without a destination in mind, the city fading behind me as the road stretched ahead. The world felt open in a way it hadn't before. Full of possibilities I had never considered. For so long, my entire identity had been wrapped around being a husband. A father. Now, I had to figure out who I was without those titles. And maybe, that wasn't a bad thing. I ended up back at Nate's house. The only place that still felt like solid ground. He was outside when I pulled in, leaning against the porch railing with a beer in hand. When he saw me, he just nodded. "Did you get what you needed?" he asked. I exhaled. "Yeah." He handed me a beer, and we sat in silence for a while, watching the sky shift from blue to orange as the sun set. It was peaceful. The kind of quiet that didn't need to be filled with words. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel lost. "You know," Nate said after a while, "this doesn't have to be the end." I looked at him, raising an eyebrow. He gestured toward the open road in front of us. "You've got a chance most people don't get. A clean slate. No baggage. No obligations. You could go anywhere. Do anything. Hell, start over completely." The idea settled deep in my chest. Unfamiliar, but not unwelcome. A clean slate. A chance to rebuild, not from the ruins of my past, but from the ground up. "Yeah," I said slowly, taking a sip of my drink. "Maybe you're right." For the first time since my world fell apart, I let myself believe it. I wasn't just a man who had lost everything. I was a man who had been given a second chance. And this time, I was going to make it count. Thank you for visited my YouTube channel. Your support, likes, and comments truly inspire me to create even more engaging content. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. You're a part of this amazing community, and I'm thrilled to share my stories with you. See you in the next video on YouTube.